Hey there, welcome back. We're now on to lesson 3. Again, this is not unit 3, it's unit 5, so it's 5-3, page 7 in your packet. All right, so function notation. A lot of times you'll see an equation written like this: y equals 3x, or y equals 3x plus 1, or it could be a number of different things. Well, now instead of a y equals, they're going to write f of x equals or g of x equals. Basically, function notation, so this is the same thing. Basically, function notation just gives your function a name. It could be f, that's the most common one, g, really anything. So you'll see f of x instead of y equals, and then your equation or your rule here. All right. And we're actually going to really get into using the calculator today. So wherever you see f of x equals, remember it's the same as y equals. And if you look at the very top left corner of your graphing calculator, it's that top button there. And we've used it before, but now we're really going to get into it with our functions because we'll be able to graph these and use our table. So make sure you have this handy. If you need to, go to Google Classroom and you can get the link for the graphing calculator. It's right there under helpful info. If you need help with it, I can certainly help you. And I would pin it to this bar here. I have it pinned, but if you right click on it by just using your mouse to right click, or just use 2 fingers, just click pin so that way you can access it at any time instead of having to search for it. Okay, so consider the function rule. F of x equals x over 3 plus 7. So this is our rule. All right, again, this is our y equals. This is our output. So basically, we put a value in for x, and then we compute it to get our y value. So it says, what does the function rule do to convert the input to the output? Well, this rule says to take the input, which is your x value, okay, and then we'll divide that by 3, and then add 7, and you'll get the output, which is your y value. All right, so you're going to see how it's got a name of f. So this wants us to find f of 6. Well, f of x is x over 3 plus 7. So if I'm looking for f of 6, I'm going to do 6 over 3 plus 7. You take out the x value, or the x, and you put the value in there. So 6 divided by 3 is 2, and 2 plus 7 gives us 9. All right. If it's negative 9, same thing. So f of negative 9 would be, instead of x over 3 plus 7, it would be negative 9 over 3 plus 7. Negative 9 divided by 3 is negative 3, plus 7 is 4. Now, a really cool thing in your calculator, because we can do it by hand like this, but you have this graphing calculator as a tool, so we're going to use that a lot. So I'm going to encourage you, yes, you can do it by hand, but always check it in your calculator, or even use your calculator to compute the whole thing. So you're going to hit y equals, okay? So I put the rectangle around it here, and I'm going to type this in. It's a fraction, so remember, for a fraction, it's going to be alpha y equals. So we hit y equals to get in there. To get your fraction, we're going to hit alpha y equals. All right, so we're in there. Alpha y equals, we'll get our fraction, hit enter. X over 3. Hit the right arrow to get out of there. It's blinking at you. Plus 7. All right, if you hit the graph, that's what the function looks like. We'll get into that next class, but if you hit second graph, this x that you put in, that's your input. So if you find 6 over in the x column, it tells you the output is 9, the same thing that we got. If I find negative 9 over in the x column, I see 4, the same thing that we got. So the calculator works as a function machine. It calculates it for you. All right, the last one's a little tricky. It says what value of x would result in the function equaling 13? Well, all of these, I gave you x. On this, I'm looking for x. So that's your output. That's your y value. So instead of putting 13 in for x, we're going to take the equation x over 3 plus 7 and set it equal to 13, right? If f of x equals this whole thing, I can replace f of x with that whole thing. And now you just have a little equation to solve. Subtract 7 from both sides. X over 3 equals 6. And then to get rid of dividing by 3, the opposite of dividing is multiplying. So I'll multiply this side by 3 and multiply this side by 3. X equals 18. And to check it, let's see. If 18 was the x value, if I plug it in, 18 over 3 plus 7, will I get 13? Let's see. 18 divided by 3 is 6. 6 plus 7 is 13. All right, most of the time it's going to give you the number in parentheses. And if you notice, x is inside the parentheses, and these are inside the parentheses. So those are your x. This was outside the parentheses, so it was your y. But again, if I go back to my calculator, we were looking for 13 in the y column. So if I scroll down, you're seeing some fractions there, and that's okay. Getting closer, we're at 14. Oh, I must have passed it. There it is, right there. 18, if you plug x in, or if you plug 18 in for x, you get 13. So 18, you could have found that in your table as well. All right, so let's just do a little bit more practice with that. All right, so here's f of x. Again, it's a different function. This time, we're going to take our input, multiply it by 3, and add 7. So if I'm looking for f of 2, instead of 3 times x, it's 3 times 2 plus 7. 6 plus 7 gives us 13. F of negative 3 would be 3 times negative 3 plus 7. You're just taking out the x in the equation and replacing it with that value. That would give us negative 9 plus 7, which is negative 2. And again, you can do a real quick check in your calculator. If I go to y equals, hit clear, type in 3x plus 7. Go to the table, second graph. We were looking for 2 and negative 3. 2 is 13. Yep. Negative 3 is negative 2. You got it. All right, so utilize that calculator. All right, h of x, this function has the square root of this whole thing. So you're going to want to do 2 times x plus 1 and then take the square root. So instead of x, this time we're using 4. So we have our square root, 2 times 4 plus 1. Ignore the square root for now. Let's just simplify. 2 times 4 is 8 plus 1 would be 9. The square root of 9 is 3. And if you're not sure, we can hit second mode to go back to the home screen. Second x squared. See the square root above it? Second x squared, 9, enter. You could have also typed in that whole thing. Second x squared, 2 times 4 plus 1. And hit enter. There it is. So your calculator does all sorts of stuff for you. Again, this is second x squared to get that square root. Okay. 2 times 0 plus 1. Well, that's 0. 0 plus 1 is 1. Square root of 1 is 1. All right, but again, I could have, right from the get-go, gone to my calculator, gone to y equals. Anytime you see function notation, square root, so second x squared, and type that in. 2x plus 1. I personally like using this because if you have a negative, if you don't put it in parentheses, it can mess up your answer. So this takes all of that into account, so you don't have to. All right, there's error because you can't have the square root of a negative, but look at h of 0, 1, same thing we got. The other one was 4, we got 3, same thing we got. You could easily type it into the calculator and get those same answers and not have to go through showing all your work. All right, so I'm just going to show that over here. So 0 was 1. If you scrolled down to 4, it was 3. And to get there, you hit y equals. You put in the equation, and then you hit second graph to get to your table. And it does the work for you. Okay? All right, so let's go to page 8. We're going to look at just a couple more questions. Boiling water at 212 degrees Fahrenheit is left in a room that's 65 degrees. Well, if it's sitting in a cold room, it's slowly going to cool off. Temperature readings are taken each hour and are given in the table below. So in this scenario, the temperature is a function of the number of hours. So instead of using y and f of x, h stands for the hours. The temperature is based on how many hours. So this says to evaluate t of 2 and interpret. So we have two things to do. So t of 2, we'll figure that out first. So just find 2, because remember that letter inside is h. So if h is 2, what's the temperature? It's just a funny way of asking it. 104. Now when it says interpret the meaning, explain what it means using words from the problem. So what does this mean in terms of that water? After 2 hours, the temperature of the water is 104 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's what we're gonna write. After 2 hours, the temperature is 104 degrees Fahrenheit. That's it. All right, it says for what value of h? So this time it wants us to find h, just like before where we had to work backwards when we had the y. Does it equal 76? So that's your temperature. We're looking for the h. So find 76. How many hours would it take for it to get to 76? 4. So h equals 4. Or you could write it as temperature at 4 hours equals 76. So interpret, say that in words. After, pretend like you're explaining this to someone that has no idea what function notation looks like. If they're just seeing this going, what does that even have to do with anything? Just explain. It's just a short way to write it. So after 4 hours, the temperature is 76 degrees Fahrenheit. All right. In the last one, it says, between what 2 consecutive hours will the temperature be 100? And explain. Well, first of all, consecutive, we heard that word back in Unit 1, means 2 numbers in a row. So between what 2 hours will the temperature be 100? Well, let's go up and look. I don't see 100 up here, but again, it's between 2 hours. Well, 100 is going to fall right in there, right? So 100 degrees is going to be right there. So if it falls between 104 and 85, it's going to be between hours 2 and 3. So between 2 and 3 hours, because 100 is between 104 and 85. Okay? All right, and this last question actually is in the wrong section, so it will come up later on. Wrong part of our notes. So just ignore it. We're all set for today. If you have questions, please stop by my math lab or send me an email. If you're a hybrid student, you can ask me in class. Your homework is on page 9, okay? 9 in your packet, which is just more practice with this. You're more than welcome to use your calculator. All right, so it's just, here's the first function. Plug in each of these numbers to figure out what it would be. Or again, you can go to your calculator and use the table. The second question, this is the function rule. So you're subtracting 5 and dividing by 2 with those 3 numbers. And finally, for there's 2 more. X squared minus 4. And then this one is x divided by 2 minus 6. So you can do it by hand, or again, you can go to your calculator and make a little table and let that help you do the work. For me, sometimes it's faster just to do it by hand. All right. Again, if you have questions, just let me know. We'll see you soon. Have a great day.